Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Miller with the city's Equity and Inclusion Department. We will be starting shortly, just allowing some additional time for those logging in to join the meeting. This is going to be a webinar, so there will be some typical Zoom limitations. You will be able, however, to still submit questions via the chat, and we will address those at the conclusion of the presentation. But thank you for your attendance and look forward to this very informative and insightful discussion. Good morning again. Good morning again. We're going to go ahead and get started since we don't have a lot of time this morning. We want to make sure that we have enough time for the presentation, for a Q&A, and some additional comments following both of those things. And so I want to ensure that we're not pressed for time. So first off, greetings. My name again is Eric Miller. I'm the Contracting and Compliance Manager with the Equity and Inclusion Department with the City of Durham. I want to welcome you all to our final event of this Med Week, which has been a very exciting time. We've had some interesting discussions, very engaging dialogue. We had opportunities to engage and meet with members of our collaboration team that are also individuals that were very instrumental in planning of this week's events. We had an opportunity to celebrate the achievements of minority and women businesses within our local community and highlight some of the advocacy and work that's being done to continue to promote and help support the development of our minority and women-owned businesses as well. Then we also had the opportunity to find out about some of the growth that's happening in the local and regional area. We had very informative discussions about opportunities. And now, we have, a name with a face and an opportunity for us to continue that discussion to hopefully forge sustainable relationships and find ways for us as firms to participate in that process. Last night, we had the opportunity for as business owners ourselves to have the platform to promote and talk about some of the products and services that we provide in the hopes of helping connect with those providers and municipalities and organizations that could potentially use our services moving forward. And now today, we're going to have the opportunity to really find out about some of the preventive measures and things that we as businesses and organizations should consider to protect ourselves from cybersecurity risks. And so we're excited about that opportunity. We're thankful for your attendance today. And I'm going to now pass the presentation or this portion of the program over to the director of our office, Ms. Deborah Giles.
Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. It's certainly my honor to be here this morning to introduce the speaker for this occasion. Paul Ash, founder and president of Securance Consulting, is a cybersecurity professional with over 20 years experience helping organizations manage risk and defend against cyber attacks. Formerly a Southeast area security expert with Ernst & Young, Paul works hands-on with small businesses, large corporations, and government agencies, including the city of Durham, to drive home improvements in security that support the business operations and objectives. You should certainly know that this is the company that helped bring the city of Durham back from the brink of disaster from a malware attack back in March of 1920. And we have been smart enough to maintain them on contract ever since. Under his leadership, Securance has performed thousands of assessments and developed innovative service offerings that are scalable and, most importantly, affordable for companies of all sizes. And that's where the city of Durham has found them of value. Paul is a frequent guest speaker at cybersecurity conferences and contributes to the professional community online and via various publications. You get a chance to go to his website, you will find all kinds of information there. His presentation today will focus on cyber threats targeting small businesses and effective protective measures. Thank you for coming, Paul.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for that gracious introduction. I'm always surprised how I'm introduced, right? It gives me a few moments to just kind of reflect on everything. Thank you all for attending this presentation. I hope that this is an interactive discussion. I think we have a nice sized group. And so I'd like to have as much interaction as possible. I believe Eric will facilitate that by managing the chat. I'm going to speak with you today about cyber attacks that affect small, medium-sized business. And hopefully we can learn together on what the threats are, what the targets are, and most importantly, how as a small, medium business, you can protect yourself, maybe even share some of this information in terms of protecting your clients. As I was introduced, I am the president and founder of Securance Consulting. I'll spend just a few minutes sharing with you a little bit about who we are. We are a cybersecurity and IT governance consulting firm. We do not have any technologies that we resell. We are not a reseller. We don't align ourselves with any technology vendors. We are an assessment firm, and we are a firm that helps organizations protect themselves. We have 30-something cybersecurity consultants. We're headquartered in Tampa, Florida. I am originally from Florida, and I just happened to land here in Tampa because I went to college here, and I found the area to be very nice. I'm born and raised in Key West. If any of you have ever been to Key West, yeah, it's a little island. It's, I guess, considered a party town. I'm up there in age, so when I was growing up, it wasn't so much a party town. But anyway, I wanted to be near the water. And so Tampa really facilitates water. And of course, I travel about 40 weeks a year. And so I needed access to an international airport. So I landed in Tampa. Anyway, more about Securance, right? We do cybersecurity. We are experts at cybersecurity. I would share with you that there is probably no other firm in the marketplace, at least in the United States, that could provide the level and the quality of services that we provide. As mentioned, we are the cybersecurity arm for the city of Durham. We were brought on in that relationship to lead the recovery efforts. We stood up a war room, and with our leadership, coupled with the leadership provided by the city, and we were able to recover that environment, particularly the critical assets, in record time. I have been involved in numerous recoveries across the country. Certainly the experience that we shared with the city of Durham is probably one of a record recoveries when I consider all of the recoveries that I have been involved in. So let's talk about what we see in the news. One of the things that's interesting about small and medium-sized businesses is that you typically don't hear them on the news relative to a ransomware attack or a breach. Typically what you're going to see on your national news, at least, the CNNs, the MSNBC, the Fox News, is if it's a big government agency, a big corporation, that's going to get all of the news press. But the truth of the matter is 85% of MSPs, managed service providers, report ransomware as a common threat to small, medium-sized businesses. We look at managed service providers for this type of data because a lot of small, medium businesses rely on managed service providers to manage their technology. And so that really becomes a really great source for this type of information. And of that number, 20% are victims of ransomware. Ransomware happens to be right now in this market one of the greatest threats. And it is one of the greatest threats because of its ease to deploy and because of the likelihood that an organization will pay the ransom. Now, you probably are aware, or you probably have heard in the news somewhere, that the federal government discourages paying ransom, and they do. And certainly, we would be supportive of refusing to pay ransom. But the truth of the matter is, if you are a hospital system or you're a small enterprise that has really critical data, and you haven't prepared yourself with backups that are offline or backups that you can recover from immediately, in some cases you have to. We were involved in in a ransomware attack with a hospital system, and all of a sudden all of their data was encrypted. Now, if you can imagine a hospital system taking care of patients in real time, patients in ICU, patients in the emergency, patients in recovery, and their practitioners can't get to their charts, or they can get to them, but they can't read them, then that's a situation where the administration of the hospital system is really forced to look at paying the ransom. And so because that happens so much, it is likely that small, medium businesses become targets of these bad actors with respect to ransom. You see the graphic at the bottom of the page here. Increase of 420% in cyber attacks over this past year. And that's one of the reasons why. One of the most recent types of breaches happened with the Kaseya. Kaseya is a technology that a lot of managed service providers use. Now, if you follow this discussion, and my thinking here is that I previously said that it's managed service providers that are highly contracted by small and medium-sized businesses to manage their technology, infrastructure, and applications. Managed service providers use this technology, Kaseya, to assist in managing the administration of these multiple client environments. The Kaseya technology was attacked, and because it is used by so many managed service providers that have so many clients, it impacted hundreds of thousands of clients across the country. The type of the attack is referred to as a zero-day exploit. A zero-day exploit, in short, means that there is a vulnerability that has been discovered, and there has been no fix or patch or security patch created for it. And so it's operating in the wild, and at any point in time, it's exploitable. So bad actors targeted this Kaseya technology, knowing that it's used by multiple MSPs. And so they encrypted a whole bunch of small and medium-sized business systems because of this vulnerability. $70 million in ransom. And you see the statistics there, 17 countries, 1,500 customers, of which most of them were coming from 50 plus managed service providers. Over 1 million endpoints. Endpoint is a workstation, a laptop, something that your end users are using to do their work. The truth of the matter is, a environment is only as protected or only as strong as its weakest link. And more times than not, the weakest link in an environment in a small, medium-sized business is the end user. That's certainly with respect to cybersecurity attacks, right? We all of the time are phishing end users and obtaining sensitive information. I just was working with a consultant that did a phishing test for a small, medium-sized business, and we recovered 15 usernames and passwords. We used those to log into their email and perpetrate the attack further. I mean, it really is very, very easy to do. And one of the things that we see is that small and medium-sized businesses aren't really understanding the true impact. The true impact is that point of sale systems can go down, your business can close, the financial loss can almost be immeasurable. There's this concept of, certainly in the cybersecurity space, I'll share this with you guys, that you go on the internet, that's technically referred to as the surface web. It's the most common web, but there's another web called the dark web. We monitor the dark web on behalf of our clients. And the reason we monitor the dark web on behalf of our clients is because bad actors are breaching a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, exfiltrating data, or phishing the users, taking that information to the dark web and selling it. And so we are never surprised by the amount and quantity of small and medium-sized businesses whose employee credentials, whose customer data, whose raw sets of data are available for sale on the dark web. The reason it's so prevalent on the dark web is because of the ease with which it is to obtain this information relative to small and medium-sized businesses. You look at a large enterprise, let's say a Lowe's Home Improvement or Northrop Grumman or Boeing. These enterprises have almost unlimited resources that they can put towards protecting their technology assets being their networks, being their application systems, being their data, being their workstations. Small and medium-sized business has to be more focused with their revenue, has to be more focused with their expenditures. And typically, one of the last areas that receive attention, that receive resources, is cybersecurity. And that is because an organization doesn't realize the cost until a loss occurs. And so the impact can be very, very significant. Why are SMBs targeted? Only 50%, 57% have in-house cybersecurity experts. 43% attempt to outsource, but the primary thing here is a lack of knowledge, right? There's just not enough knowledge. And the truth is right now in the US and globally, there is a shortage of cybersecurity experts. They are just getting scooped up all of the time. And so there is a shortage of them. Because there is a shortage of them, you apply the supply demand model, the fees, the cost of cyber experts goes up, and sometimes it becomes out of budget for small and medium-sized business. And so they attempt to do it in-house. We see a lot of SMBs that have very, very immature cybersecurity processes in place. There is this concept of cybersecurity where you build multiple layers of defense. In the SMB marketplace, we see there's only a few layers in place. So the bad actors understand that SMBs don't have the cybersecurity expertise. They typically are not training their end users. I previously said that, an enterprise from a cybersecurity perspective is only as strong as its weakest link, and that weak link, generally speaking, is the end user. When we are engaged by an organization to assess their environment, one of the first things we attack is the end user. And a lot of end users are unprepared to identify attacks. That's really key. They're unprepared to identify attacks. There is this notion that as a small business, we are too small and to be attacked. No one really is looking at us. And that is a big, big misconception, because again, if you were to search the dark web for small and medium-sized business data for sale, we are never surprised by the volume of it, but you would be. You'll search the dark web and look in your local community. And I would almost guarantee you in your local community, you will see businesses, SMBs, on the dark web with confidential, sensitive data for sale. So there is really no business that's too small. Now, I say no business too small. Prior to having this discussion with you, I was talking with Eric and Deborah about this whole concept of SMBs, right? The federal government considers a small business a business with 100 million in revenue. I think you can argue that that's not the level of small business I'm referring to here. I'm really referring to a business with 50 employees. That's what I would consider a small business, right? And those businesses are targets of ransom. Why? Because there's not the knowledge within that enterprise of how to protect itself. And it is highly likely that that business is going to pay the ransom, so long as the ransom is reasonable. And a lot of these small businesses hold really valuable data. That's why it's so prevalent for resale on the internet. If I am a bad actor and I attack a small business in the city of Durham, and I say, let's say I get 500 customer credit cards, I can resell that on the internet, on the dark web, probably 10 times before it becomes stale. That's all free revenue. On the dark web, that the currency exchange is Bitcoin. So that's all free revenue from one attack on an SBE. So it's really critical. What are the threats? Generally speaking, they fall into these three categories, right? Credential theft. I want to steal a username and a password. I'm going to get that by phishing your users, and then I'm going to deploy a ransom attack. So I'm going to phish your users, I'm going to get a credential, I'm going to log into your network, log into your systems, and I'm going to deploy a piece of malware that's going to begin to encrypt your systems and hamstring you from doing business. And so it literally is that easy. We can deploy this type of attack in the matter of 10 to 14 days. And so the ease with which it occurs is just makes it so that bad actors really cannot ignore it. When you look at the cost to recover is significant. I previously talked about the layers of defense, right? Here are a example of the 7 typical layers of defense that we advise our clients that they should have in place. When you look at a small, medium-sized business, they have very few of these in place. They, generally speaking, have the second one in place, perimeter security, and that's it. And so you look at an SBE and you look at it from a security perspective, and as a bad actor, you say, well, I know they have a perimeter security in place. That's generally a firewall. So you have a firewall protecting your network from anything easy on the internet. As a bad actor, I say, well, that's very, very easy to defeat. And by the way, all of these other layers that I would encounter when attacking a federal agency or when attacking a big city or when attacking a big corporation, I don't have to worry about defeating them. So that's why I'm going to target the small, medium-sized business. Most importantly, what can we do? What can we do as small, medium-sized businesses to protect ourselves? Understanding that we don't have all of the resources to put all of these layers in place. To some extent, that is unreasonable to expect that a SBE is going to spend a whole bunch of money building these layers of security. So what is it can we do? Over our 20 years of experience, we really have identified 4 things that are absolutely critical to protect your environment. These 4 things are tied to various security and control frameworks that are globally and nationally accepted. For this discussion, we are pointing to the CIS. The CIS is a Center for Internet Security, well-published, well-regarded framework. The first thing you want to do is secure your enterprise assets and software by configuring them appropriately. What do we mean by that? Apply account management and access control, right? Only give users access to the information they need to perform their job function. You'd be surprised how many organizations, small and medium-sized businesses, hire someone and give them access to everything. So you want to limit the access to enterprise assets and their software. You want to manage everyone's account. If an employee leaves the organization, disable their account immediately. Account management. Access control. You want to restrict what they have access to. You want to restrict the amount of information they have access to. I was working for a client in Texas. Not too long ago, and they had an executive that they had given access to the kingdom. And as it turns out, it was a healthcare company. This executive downloaded all of their patient data and was reselling it. So had they limited, and this executive didn't need access to any of that information to do his job. So had they limited his access to just the information that he needed to do his job, they would not have been exposed to that risk. And then last but not least, and in some cases, I think this should be the first thing, is security awareness and skills training. Small and medium-sized business, at a minimum, you need to invest. You need to have your clients invest. You need to invest in training your end users about their role in protecting the organization's assets. That is absolutely critical. It is typically referred to as end user training. There are a whole bunch of providers out there that do it very reasonably. We're talking $7 a month per employee. They continually train that employee on how to look out for email phishing, how to look out for text phishing, how to look out for whaling, how to look out for these types of techniques that are very common that bad actors are using to breach environments. So to summarize, SMBs continue to be major targets. They continue to be major targets because of the lack of knowledge about how to protect themselves, because of the lack of funding put towards cybersecurity, and the ease of which it is to breach them. A lot of that information is available for sale on the dark web, but what we can do to protect ourselves, protect our assets, enterprise assets, which is data and software, manage employee accounts, and train your end users. So I think I was glad to share that information with you. And certainly if there are any questions, whether it's on this topic or anything else relative to cybersecurity that I hold myself out as an expert to be, I will take those questions.
If there are no questions, I have one I would like to ask. Understanding that, some of these measures are cost prohibitive for smaller businesses, do you all provide customized solutions that are more personalized to the needs of a small business owner that, to allow them to get that level of protection, that's necessary?
Yeah. So that's, Eric, that's a very good question. We do our very best to right size a solution set to the environment. So we don't, for example, and I previously was saying in the discussion that there is this model of 7 layers of defense. We don't prescribe or dictate that an enterprise needs to have all of them, right? We really look at an enterprise, we assess, we build a risk profile, right? What would a bad actor target in your environment? And then what do you need to protect it? And then we provide multiple solutions, multiple ways. One of the things that we try to do is We don't necessarily want to provide a solution that forces an organization out to go and spend money, because there are ways to protect yourself by just changing some of your internal processes. I previously spoke about, limiting access to data, right? That's a no cost activity. You have to identify the data. You have to build out a matrix to say, if you're in this role, you get access to this. And so there are ways to protect your environment that don't necessarily cost a lot of money. And that's the approach that Securance takes when looking at SMBs and how to build cybersecurity postures that are mature.
Okay, thank you, Paul. We do have some questions that have been submitted via the Q&As. I want to share that with you now. The first is, do you provide any shared solutions for small enterprises? For example, training. And I think it somewhat speaks to what, your previous response.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, we do. Securance does provide a whole host of services for small businesses, including training. We help organizations understand and how to protect themselves for a ransomware attack. One of the things that is very, very popular right now for us with small businesses is to come in for 3 hours and do a ransomware simulation. So we'll come in and we will simulate a ransomware attack in your environment and make sure that you are ready to respond. Response includes detection, containment, eradication, and recovery, and of course the communication. I'll share with the organization. I'll share with this group here is when we were assisting the city in its recovery efforts. I cannot stress enough how many times, as I was walking out of City Hall to go back to the hotel at 11 o'clock at night, there was a reporter asking me for comment. So you have to have in place a communication that is consistent with the enterprise and what it wants to communicate out, because a lot of this information doesn't need to be communicated out. It needs to be contained. And so, yes, we do, a 2 or 3 hour tabletop exercise. The value of that is tremendous because you learn a lot about how you would respond in the event of a real ransomware attack. So yes, we do offer shared packages, small packages for small, medium-sized businesses.
Thank you. Another question is, what would the financial difference be for a small business between investing in preventing these attacks versus reacting to an attack?
That's a very good question. I mean, that is a tremendously good question. I can tell you in my experience, the cost of prevention is 1/10 of the cost to react. I will also share, there's a really good question. I will also share that insurance organizations are requiring enterprises to have what's called cybersecurity insurance. So you go out and you get cybersecurity insurance, and say you get $1 million policy and you're paying, I don't know, $5,000 a year for this policy. And you think that provides you protection. Within the last 3 years, there have been so many claims against cybersecurity policies that cybersecurity insurance providers are refusing to pay claims, and it's going through the court system now. I have a whole list of claims that have had cyber attacks. They assembled all of the invoices for the recovery and submitted it and got 20% reimbursement. So it is fool's gold to think that if you have a cyber insurance policy, that is protection. It is not. And not only are they only paying a small percentage of the claim, they then also will drop you as an insured, and you will find it very difficult to carry cyber insurance. And if you are in a business where you are required to carry that to obtain clients and obtain customers, you will be in quite the pickle, as my mother used to say.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions. They're steadily coming in. Another one we have is for businesses with less than 50 employees. What would you recommend for them? And when should they move up their levels of protection at beginning, or if we grow, when should they keep that in mind?
Another very good question. For businesses with less than 50 employees, my first recommendation is that you subscribe to a very cost-effective end-user security training. I'm going to throw out a few names because these names are companies. Again, Securance has no allegiance to any of these companies, but over my 20 years of experience, I've seen a lot of them. So there's a company called Know Before. They are like a couple of dollars per user per month to train them. And that training will go a long way in protections. SANS, Securing the Human, is another one. FishMe is another one. These are cloud-based solutions. What has to happen if you subscribe to one of these solutions is you have to have some level of managing to make sure the users do it. So tie it to a performance evaluation, tie it to some other activity that they are required to do, that they are incentivized to do, to make sure that they get that training. So that's the first thing. If you're a small business with under 50 employees, that I just say is a must do. The next thing I would say is, when do you decide that I need to make more investment in cybersecurity? You make that determination primarily based on looking at your data. How much customer data do I maintain in my network? And if that data were to be lost instantly, what is the impact to my business? And if the answer to that is that I will go out of business, then you need to begin to implement additional layers of security. If the answer to that is, well, I'm not necessarily going to go out of business, I can recover, I can rebuild, then you could be more cautious in your planning and your investment towards additional layers of security.
Thank you. We have another question. You mentioned resolving the breach at the city of Durham in record time. Can you share what's average time to resolve similar situations and how long it took to resolve the situation here at the city?
So I will share with you that there really is no average to resolve, because there are so many variables involved in resolve. And let's just define what resolve means. When there is a breach similar to what happened at the city, and I don't know how many of you are aware or not, but in short, the entire city's network was encrypted. All of the servers, all of the data, all of the workstations. So that's what we would consider a holistic breach. Resolve means to be able to recover all of your critical systems and get employees back working. We were able to recover the critical systems within 4 days. That is record time. I have been involved in another similar breach that we would consider a full-scale breach, and that breach took 40 days to recover. Literally, the business shut down because it could not recover, and they did not have the resources to pay the amount of Bitcoin that was being asked. So it varies tremendously. I've been involved in some breaches where just the servers were impacted, but the user workstations weren't impacted, and they had certain cloud services. So when you have applications in the cloud, those aren't impacted, and so they can still work. If you have your endpoint and you have cloud systems, you can still work. But when you have an organization that has all of their technology on premise and not in the cloud, and everything is impacted, it becomes quite the issue. The other thing let me share with you is that, and Eric, please correct me. I mean, roll me in if I'm going too long on time, but I love these discussions and I love these questions. The other thing that's really important is a lot of organizations think that I have a backup so I can recover from backup. Understand this: bad actors are just as smart, if not smarter than we as cybersecurity professionals. The truth of the matter is, as cybersecurity professionals, we are always catching up to the bad actors. And so in that same vein and in that same regard, what are bad actors doing? When they breach a network, the first thing they hunt for is your backup file, and they encrypt that first. They encrypt your backup, so now that is no longer available to you as a resource to recover. Again, with their objective being, I want this enterprise, I want this SBE to pay the ransom. So if I lock them out of their backup and then I encrypt their production systems, they really have no choice.
Thank you. And we do have questions steadily coming in, so thank you all for that. The next one we have is there a checklist and assessment tool for small businesses so one can know what levels of protection they should get based on their business?
Yes, very good question. Very good question. There are multiple checklists. available on the internet. You can just Google cybersecurity checklist, and you will be inundated. Let me say this. I think that those checklists, most of them, I would say 99% of them, are not worth a dime, right? That's why, one, they're free, but also they provide false sense of hope, and they direct you to engage with some firm or something like that. At the federal level, Department of Homeland Security, CISA organization has some checklists. Those are generally built and focused around government entities and not private practice. So yes, there are checklists out there. I would just say be cautious how much credence you pay to the results. Some of the better checklists out there, we have been engaged by organizations to review how they have completed checklists. 100% of the time, they have completed them incorrectly, and garbage in, garbage out. They're getting bad results. So you complete a checklist and you complete it incorrectly, and it says, well, your cybersecurity posture is a 3 on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being you're hardened, like the federal government Secret Service. If you don't have the right inputs, you're going to get the wrong output. And that's one of the problems with a lot of the checklists that we see out on the internet.
Okay, thank you. Another question we have is, are there any industries or situations where businesses with less than 50 employees, including micropreneurs, need to think more intentionally about cybersecurity?
That's a very good question. I would say, certainly in the seat that I sit in the space that I work, I don't think that there is any organization that a bad actor would not target. Now, let me be clear, right? You have these bad actors that are what's referred to as kiddie scripts. These are, teenagers that are just learning how to do this hacking. And so they're going to target anyone. They're not necessarily going to target what I'm going to refer to as a mom and pop with a shingle, right? They're not going to target someone that has one unit restaurant. But when you start looking at a small business with 10, 15 employees that has some local community reputation, because this is where it starts. Kids in your local community are sitting in their bedroom and they've got high-speed internet access, and they've downloaded a few security tools, and they're like, hey, let me try this. Not long ago, there was I'm in Tampa, Florida. Not long ago, there was a kid that made the news because he created a device using a Pringles can, and he walked through his neighborhood and connected to every neighbor's Wi-Fi account and downloaded every neighbor's data on personal devices. So if you're at home and you have a PC or a laptop that you just use personally, and you keep your credit card balances there and password files there and pictures there, he literally walked through the neighborhood and real time was downloading that information. So if you consider that you have some teenager that is that inquisitive, doing that in his local neighborhood, that has to extrapolate out to small business. Because that same local teenager who wants the latest pair of Nikes will say, well, heck, if I take this to the local strip mall, if I take this to my local stores and get that same information, and then go into the store, show them the data and say, give me $100 and I'll protect you. That is how it starts. That is where it starts. And it is happening real time in every community across the country.
Thank you again, Paul. We have a few more questions. First, what are the potential legal ramifications for a small business should sensitive personal information of their customers be lost? And can their customers potentially bring forth legal claims?
So the legal ramifications for an SBE whose customer data is breached primarily depend on this factor. If the small business did not take adequate measures to protect that data, and if they were egregious and negligent in that data such that breach was bound to happen. We see So sensitive data is typically going to be referred to as PII, personally identifiable information, PCI, credit card data information, PHI, private health information. And then, of course, as a business enterprise, you may have what's referred to as IP, intellectual property, that you want to protect. If you do not take what's referred to as reasonable measures, and it's the courts that determine what is reasonable based on the specifics of a situation. If you don't take reasonable measures, then you will face significant fines, and those fines can be levied by the customers themselves in a small class action and by some governing body. So for example, if you're a small business and you accept credit card data and you do not take reasonable measures to protect that, then the PCI organization will levy fines against you. So yes, there are legal ramifications.
Okay. Next question is, should businesses Google Black Web to see what information of their customers is being sold? And if the answer is yes, what should they look for? And what would you recommend as the prioritized steps should they take if they find they've been breached?
It's a very good question. I think to Google, so the dark web, there are search engines on the dark web. It's certainly not Google. Access to the dark web requires a special web browser. It's typically referred to as a torrent browser, and then you get access into the dark web. I would say this: it would be prudent to periodically search the dark web. Having said that, it really takes a unique skill set to search the dark web when looking for very targeted information, such information like about your particular enterprise. It is not, the dark web is not set up like the surface web where there's a Google platform and you can type in various keywords. There are various search mechanisms in the dark web, but some of them prioritize gambling, or some of them prioritize sex sites, and some of them prioritize compromised passwords and data files. So it takes a skill set. So I would hesitate, and in fact, I would hesitate to share with this group that you should download a torrent browser and begin to search the dark web, because you will get very frustrated and it can be very time consuming if you don't have the expertise in doing that. Now, having said that, I do think it would be prudent to engage a firm maybe once a year, maybe less frequently than that, to just give you an analysis of what your presence looks like on the dark web. And then based on those results, take the necessary action. So for example, if a password file is being sold about your enterprise on the dark web, even if you only have 15 employees, then just change all 15 passwords. So again, I'm not advocating going out and spending money. I'm advocating being prudent and being aware and protecting yourself that way.
Thank you. I think we have one more comment, I believe, and it's kind of tied into a question. But so based on some of the guidance you provided, cybersecurity is one of those areas where we need to do, where we shouldn't actually do a do-it-yourself approach unless you have that technical expertise. You should really focus on bringing in someone with that subject matter expertise, and understand that the garbage in, garbage out principle applies in this scenario. So you have to make sure that you're inputting or looking for the accurate data.
Yeah, that's a very good summarization of what I've been trying to communicate. I don't think that small medium businesses needs to back up the dump truck or back up the bank truck to get the necessary or adequate cybersecurity in place. But I do think periodically having some expert give you some assessment of your profile. Securance offers a product that we refer to as a threat profile matrix, and we look at all of the threat vectors to your enterprise, specific to your enterprise, and that is dependent upon the different industries. And then we determine for you what preventative measures you have in place, or what measures you need to put in place to prevent those threat actors from having success. So something even as small as that would certainly go a long way. And again, a lot of it is about just being educated and having awareness of where you can apply appropriate again, I'm gonna use the term reasonable measures. Back to the last question about the legal ramifications, one of the things that we have seen is that if an organization has reasonable controls in place, they are less likely to be fined. Right? And so that's really, really critical is you can demonstrate that you have reasonable controls in place. If you can demonstrate, hey, every 3 years I have a cybersecurity assessment, right? So that's being able to demonstrate that you are taking it seriously and you have reasonable controls in place to protect your customer and employee data. And not only customers, right? You have employee data that's certainly very valuable to those employees. You want to take measures to protect that as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ash. Are there any other questions at this time?
I think I'm going to pose one, or at least get some help that may be beneficial to some of the listeners here. One of the things that you pointed out repeatedly is that the real weakest link is the end user. And I've noticed that with the city, we have at least screensavers warning us about phishing all the time. And that to me, I think is a kind of a small thing, but something that could certainly be valuable to small businesses, providing you know what needs to go on that screensaver. So do you have any tips about warning employees about phishing?
Deborah, that's a good point that you bring out, right? And it is really in line with what we've been discussing here in terms of it doesn't necessarily have to cost a whole bunch of money. That's an example that you just gave of something that really doesn't cost that much money at all, if any, that you can put on your end users, and every time they come to their workstation, that screensaver's up and they're reminded of their role and importance of cybersecurity. That happens to be one of the recommendations Securance made to the city that was well received and has been implemented. So I think there are a number of little things like that that you can do. We have a client that has a best practice end user training program, and the things that they do is they post around their building in their bathrooms posters about end user security. They have them on screensavers. They do various events. They have a monthly newsletter. I think one of the things a lot of small, medium-sized businesses do is they communicate to their employees through periodic newsletters or email communications, and always add a footnote: cybersecurity, your role, right? So it's little things like that that don't really cost any money, just take a little bit of thought, that I think go a really long way in protecting the enterprise by arming the weakest link with the necessary information to protect itself.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? We have a few more minutes. If not, Paul, would you like to make any closing comments?
Well, I would just like to say I appreciate this opportunity. Deborah and Eric, thank you for giving us the invite, giving us this platform. I hope that the attendees were able to gather some little bits of information that they can carry with them and be helpful. And last but not least, I'm going to say it's Friday, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Well, thank you again, Paul. We really appreciate the insight, the guidance, and I know for me personally, I learned a lot. So I really do appreciate your time this morning. Now, I would like to just offer a few closing comments as we approach the end of this week's Midweek. I would like to again recognize Deborah Giles as she's announced her retirement, and wanted to again thank her for her contributions to this effort, not only for this week's Midweek, but going back in time to her contributions for Midweeks before and to the work that she has done over the years to support the growth and development of minority and women and small business owners in our community. And we wanted to again extend our appreciation to you, Ms. Giles, for the work you've done. You clearly will be missed. Also, I would like to, at this time, to extend an appreciation to Paul and other panelists and presenters that participated in our MedWeek events throughout this week. Utilizing a virtual platform, it's very important that we have individuals participate that are able to make the connection and be open to dialogue and discussion that is interactive and provides value for all of those in attendance. And so we really do extend a heartfelt appreciation for all of those who are participating and help make this event what it's been this week. I would also like to recognize the members of the planning committee that have been very instrumental in helping us deliver a diverse set of events throughout a week in a virtual space that does present challenges, but I think the committee certainly put their effort into developing diverse offerings, and we tried to reach out and provide a unique experience, even in the virtual space, that would give all of our attendees something to take away moving forward. I would like to again extend congratulations to all of the award recipients who were recognized this week at the MedWeek Luncheon. There have been accomplishments of many in our community, and considering the challenging circumstances that we've been confronted with over the past few years, it's even more important that we take a moment to highlight the achievements and accomplishments of those in our community. So we wanted to again extend our appreciation to those individuals and congratulations to them as well. And in terms of just kind of capping up this week, it's been a great experience for us. We really do appreciate the insightful interaction, the feedback. I know I've learned a lot. I've made some really good connections, and I think that's a result of those who have attended and been willing to be vulnerable and open up themselves for discussion and share their story. And so I think that experience has certainly enhanced MedWeek for us, and it has certainly given us some things for consideration moving forward on how we can really improve this experience and make it something that we all find value in. So we really do want to appreciate you as attendees, because it's certainly been a great experience for us as well. And so in closing, I know it's Friday and a lot of you have seen enough of me this week, so I'll kind of let you all go and wish you all the best. Have a great weekend, and thank you again for supporting us this week. Take care.